Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. With Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Phase 4 has almost come to a close, so I'm going to rank all the phases of the MCU from the weakest to the best in my opinion. Before I tell you guys how I'd rank all the phases, let me know down in the comments how would you rank every single phase in the MCU, and let me know your thoughts on Phase 4 specifically. I know a lot of people are very mixed on it, and I know there's a lot of people that really enjoyed it, a lot of people that completely hated it. I'd love to know your thoughts. With that said, I'm going to get started with my ranking, and at last place for me is going to be Phase 1 of the MCU. Now, I don't think this is like a bad phase or anything. I think there's a lot of stuff in here that I actually really enjoy. I think obviously this is the phase that got the MCU going, so I really respect it for that reason. I think the first Iron Man movie, which started off the MCU, is a really great movie, and I think still to this day it holds up. And every time I rewatch it, I really forget how much I enjoyed the movie, and every time I watch it I really thoroughly have a good time watching the movie. And I think especially as everything leads up to the end when everything comes together in the Avengers, I think it's all really good. And the Avengers obviously is just an amazing film that kind of set the stage for team up comic book movies. We would not have the MCU that we have today if it wasn't for Iron Man and especially the Avengers, because that is what really got all these team up stuff to the level that it is now. With that said though, I do think everything between those two movies is not great. I think there's some underrated stuff. I think The Incredible Hulk, Thor, and Captain America: The First Avenger, all three of those movies I really enjoy, but I think a lot of people hate on them. There's a lot of people that don't like Thor. There's a lot of people that don't like The Incredible Hulk. There's a lot. I think Captain America: The First Avenger is pretty underrated, and I don't really understand because I think they're good movies. I don't think they're great, but I think they're thoroughly enjoyable. And every time I watch them, I have a pretty good time watching them. I don't get the hate that some of them get. But honestly, they're not great. They're not as good as Iron Man is. They're not as good as the Avengers is. And Iron Man 2, I don't think is a good movie. That is one of the weakest MCU movies in my opinion. So overall, I think this is a good phase. I think it's a great start for the MCU, but that's what it is. It's a good start and it kind of set the stage for everything, but I don't think in and of itself it's necessarily a great phase, and it's not one I find myself revisiting often other than Iron Man and the Avengers. And number 3 is going to be Phase 4, the latest phase of the MCU. And I've been quite negative to this phase, for the most part. I've said it's very disappointing for the most part for me. And I reviewed She-Hulk a week ago, and I did not like that show. It's probably the weakest thing the MCU has ever done, in my opinion. So for the most part, Phase 4 has been disappointing for me, but I'm not going to say it's bad because, like I said, I think phase one is a good phase, and I think this is also kind of like that. It's okay, it's enjoyable. I enjoyed a lot of stuff from it, but the problem with it is that I don't think I think the projects are just very inconsistent because there's a lot of stuff in here that I think are really, really good, just great projects. There's some that I think are good, enjoyable, some that are just okay, and then some that just completely fell flat, like She-Hulk. So what I would say about this phase is that it's just it's very inconsistent with the quality, and I also don't think it's able to bring a cohesive story. The MCU is really kind of known for how it brings everything together, because in Phase 1 it brought everything together with the Avengers, Phase 2 Avengers Age of Ultron, Phase 3 Infinity War and Endgame, but this phase never had something like that. This phase is just kind of random projects that really don't have any connecting tissue that we know of yet. Some of them have the multiverse kind of connecting them, like Loki, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man No Way Home. They have multiverse related stuff, so they hint at it a little bit, but we don't really see how all these projects are connected like we did in the other phases. So I think because of that reason, maybe it's just it just doesn't do that for me. If Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania came out in this phase and kind of answered some questions, maybe I'd like it more. But as of right now, it's just a bunch of projects that we know nothing about how they're connected. It started off with WandaVision, which I think is it's a pretty great show until the finale. I think the finale was disappointing, but overall I think it's a good show. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, and Hawkeye came out that year, and the other three, they're okay. I think Loki especially is really good. I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier kind of gets a bad rep. I still think it's a good show. I don't think it's great, but it's okay. And same thing with Hawkeye. I think I I I don't know what to say really, because we have all these projects that came out. We also have shows like She-Hulk, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel that are completely different. They have nothing connected about them, and I do like that about this phase. I like that it was more experimental, and I like the fact that they tried to do new things instead of doing the same old stuff again, because that's what Marvel has kind of had a problem with. Every single thing they put out kind of has the same formula, and I think this phase kind of broke the mold for that. And even with the movies, they tried to do something different with Eternals. I think Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the most mature thing that the MCU has ever put out. So I think in that way, like, they've tried to do different things. And even with something like What If, which is a animated show about different multiverse stuff, I think even that is very different from other things in the MCU. And obviously we had Werewolf by Night come out, which is a lot darker than other MCU projects. So in a lot of ways, I do respect this phase for what it did. I like what it was going for, but I never understood like how it was connected in any way. And I don't think the projects were very consistent, because they were like all over the place with the quality. Some were great, some were really not great, and some of them were okay. So because of that, I think phase 4 was very disappointing for me. I wish it was better. I think it could have been really good if the projects were better and it maybe had some sort of connective tissue. And I do want to see where this is going, because this is obviously the start of the multiverse saga, and they're kind of like trying to get going right now, kind of like they did in phase 1. But I think this phase is kind of like the definition of quantity over quality, because they put out so many things. They put out I think 12 or 13 projects in this one phase, and none of them are really that memorable. Obviously, Spider-Man No Way Home had all three Spider-Man come together, so I think that was good in a way. But for the most part, there's nothing in this phase that is like top 5 MCU material for me. Even Spider-Man No Way Home, as good as it is, I would not put that in my top 5 as far as MCU movies go. So there's a lot of good stuff here, but I do think it could have been a lot better. And I hope phases 5 and 6 can improve on this, because at the moment, I wasn't as big of a fan of phase 4 as I wanted to be. Although I still think it's okay. I just wished it was a lot better. My runner-up is going to be phase 2. This is where I think the MCU really started to get going for me. And this is where I was really introduced to the MCU. This is when I started to watch the movies and kind of like really like them. And I think I think the first MCU movie I ever saw in a movie theater was Avengers Age of Ultron. So I guess in that way, it also kind of has a personal memory to it, tied to it. So I maybe that's why I have it as high as I do. But I really do love this phase. I think this is where the MCU kind of found its stride, because with the Avengers, they showed the world what they could do with superhero movies, and now they took that to the next level. I do think there's some mediocre stuff in here. Like, I know a lot of people hate Thor: The Dark World. I don't hate it. I think it's okay. But like, it's not a great movie. It's a very messy film. It's a very flawed film. Iron Man 3, I know a lot of people hate that movie. I do think it gets a bad rep. I enjoy it for what it is. Like, it's a fun kind of Iron Man movie without like that. It does a really good job of exploring Tony Stark as a character, so I enjoy that about it. Obviously, it does have a villain problem, but I still think it's a fun movie just to watch in general. And then you have Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which a lot of people say is like one of the top 3 or maybe the best MCU movie. I don't think it's that good, but it is probably in my top 5. I really love that movie. I think it does a great job of kind of having a political thriller inside of the MCU. So, and the action in there is insane. Some of the best action we've seen in the MCU. I do really love what they do with Bucky and Captain America's character in there. And obviously Guardians of the Galaxy just introduces a whole other side to the MCU, and I think it's just a ton of fun. And every time I watch that movie, it's just really heartwarming, and I really enjoy what James Gunn was able to do with that film, and how it kind of expanded the MCU in a way that we would not have seen in any of the other projects. And Avengers Age of Ultron, I know a lot of people don't like that movie. A lot of people found it disappointing. I absolutely love it. Maybe it's just because it's the first MCU movie I saw in a theater, but I just really love that movie. Every time I see it, I just find more things to enjoy about it. It's not as good as all the other Avengers movies, but I still think it's an amazing film that I've never understood why people don't like. I really love that movie. And I hope at some point it gets the recognition it deserves because I genuinely think it's a great film. And then it obviously ends off with Ant-Man, which is just a fun, delightful little movie. Paul Rudd is great as Ant-Man, and I think this phase really kind of understood what the MCU should be, because like I said, the phase one was kind of like set the footing and laid the foundation for what the MCU could be. This is what took it to the next level. And honestly, I wouldn't even mind if someone puts this at their number one, because I do think phase two and my number one choice, which you probably already know, are really close. I think both of them are really good phases, and this is what, like, this kind of set the stage for phase three, and this is what, like, I think the MCU should be, and this is what I kind of expected from phase four, but it wasn't able to deliver on that, so I was kind of disappointed by it. But phase two is great, and I really love this phase, and this is where the MCU really started to get going, in my opinion. But at first place for me, probably without question, is phase three of the MCU. This is what showed the world what the MCU could be, and some of my favorite movies of all time are in this phase. I absolutely love phase three of the MCU. I think all of the phases in the MCU, this is the one that kind of feels the most connected in a way. And I maybe phase one, because it did kind of lead up to the Avengers with every single film. But I think this phase, because it had so many different projects, not nearly as much as phase four, but it did have a lot of projects, and all of them came together really well at the end with Infinity War and Endgame. And it started off with Captain America Civil War, which is my personal favorite MCU movie. I know a lot of people disagree on that, but I absolutely love that movie. And to me, it is without question the best thing to come out of the MCU. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So whenever I watch that movie, it's just really great just to see how the heroes kind of like break apart and how that leads to a bunch of consequences in future movies. I think that is probably the best thing about this phase, that it shows our heroes that without each other, they can't really handle any threat. Like in Infinity War, when we get to that movie, Cap and Tony are not together. The team is not together. So when they try to fight Thanos, they end up failing. And then when they come together in Endgame, that's when they really start to, like, win. And I think that's what the MCU does such a great job of, is that these characters, they're nothing without each other. They need each other to succeed. And I think that's what this phase does a great job of. And there's just a lot of great stuff in here. Like, even outside of the Avengers movies and Captain America Civil War, there's a lot of great stuff here. Spider-Man obviously gets introduced to the MCU in this phase, and I think Homecoming is just a really delightful film. It's fun to watch, it's entertaining, it's fun to see like a more kind of a high schooler's perspective of the MCU, just how being a superhero is like from Peter's perspective. I think is a ton of fun to watch. Black Panther, a new character introduced to the MCU, and his movie obviously broke $1 billion, and it's a great movie. I still think it's a great movie. I do think it's a little overrated. Should have been nominated for Best Picture. Probably not. I don't think it's that good. But it is a really great film that I really do enjoy a lot. And Thor Ragnarok completely reinvented Thor as a character. The first Thor movie, like I said, I think it's much better than people give it credit for. But it's not like an amazing movie. It's not like top tier MCU. And then you have Thor: The Dark World, which is very disappointing, kind of bland. But this movie kind of brings Thor back to form and kind of shows what Thor can be. And I think that Taika Waititi just did a great job. Now, I don't think Thor: Love and Thunder is a good movie. It is the most disappointing MCU movie that I've probably ever seen. Is Thor: Love and Thunder. But I think Thor Ragnarok, he did a great job of just balancing both kind of the darker stuff that happens in the movie and also the more lighthearted comedy side of Thor. And I think this movie is what Thor: Love and Thunder should have been like, but Thor: Love and Thunder didn't do that. But I think in this movie, Thor Ragnarok, they just did a great job of perfectly showing what Thor should be as a character. Now, there's a few projects in Phase 4 that I don't completely love. I do think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is not as good as the first one. It's still a fun movie. I still have a fun time watching it. I don't think it's great, but it's a good movie. And Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, is an enjoyable film. I think Spider-Man Far From Home is an enjoyable film. Both of them, not great, but really fun, just entertaining times. Like those are movies I watch, like, just kind of in the background whenever I feel like watching something. It's not something like that I'm completely focused in on, like I am with like Captain America Civil War, Thor Ragnarok, or both the Avengers film in this phase. So they're not great, but they're really good. Spider-Man Far From Home and Ant-Man and the Wasp. And obviously Captain Marvel is the one that a lot of people hate on. And honestly, to be completely honest, I've never understood the hate for that movie. Since the first time I saw it, I've always thought it was an okay film. It's not bad. I don't get the hate for it. I think it's a good enough, okay enough film to kind of introduce her character. I don't think it's great. I think I've only watched it once or twice, so it's not like I love the movie or anything. I just don't get the hate for it because it's fine. It's not a great film, but it never, like, it's not a movie that I watch and kind of dread watching like a lot of other people seem to. So yeah, to me overall, Phase 3 is easily the best phase of the MCU. It has a really connected storyline, and with movies like Captain America Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, it just comes to a really great, satisfying conclusion, and it is what closed out the Infinity Saga of the MCU. So to me, Phase 3 is the best phase of the MCU. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Let me know down in the comments, how would you rank all the phases of the MCU? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I'll see you in the next video.